Greetings, friends. I'm Galen, and welcome to the Gaming Adventure and Discovery Explorers.
A show about our adventures and discoveries as we explore the world of gaming. I'm Chad.
On today's show,
Dragons.
Let's explore. Hey, Chad, how you doing?
Hey, Galen. I'm pretty good. I'm great, actually.
Excellent.
Mostly great.
Glad to hear it.
So I got the new setup in an actual room, not a closet, with some light.
We're approaching the big time.
We're getting big. I'm getting big. Yeah, should be fewer distractions and noises for me to muffle or close out or whatever. And unfortunately, it also means the dogs won't be visiting.
Aww.
Which I enjoy their visits when I'm editing.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm well up to the point where I examine my gaming life, which has been dry as of late. I have no gaming to talk about. So I thirst for it. I'm thirsty for our discussion today and to hear about if you've had any gaming experiences.
Yeah, and it's not been like it was last time. So last episode I had a bunch of things to share, and this time I don't have a whole legion, but I do have a few things to report in the computer gaming realm. I finally finished Planescape Torment. So I've been playing that since like the fall, I think, or something.
Yeah.
And I was playing Planescape Torment, the enhanced version from, I think, Beamdog Games. So it's essentially the same as the original, but just polished up, and some of the functionality and UI was improved, and it showed it. It was really good. It was really fun. It had a few flaws. It was not a perfect game. It was, the good and the bad all together is it was really story driven. And it's story-driven in that way when you have, say, a dungeon master who wants to tell their story as part of the game. So you're only going to tell one story. Contrasted with, Skyrim, for example, where which is an unfair comparison because Skyrim is just epic. But Skyrim, you can tell a lot of different stories. In this game, you really couldn't. There was a few deviations in it, and it tried to kind of make it seem like you had some choices, and your personality could be different. And your alignment could be different, and some factions, but really it's going to be beginning, middle, and end, the same thing. Not that many different non-player characters. Your party just kind of was what it was, with a few possible variations. So that was okay, and the story was good and interesting. One flaw, though, is that you spend really the entire middle part of the game talking to people and just doing like fetch quests and things. And that was fun because it was immersive and well written. But then you level up all the while you're leveling up, and then when the fighty part comes, you haven't practiced. It's a little like starting at level 10 when you're playing a game, and there's spells you haven't even used, and a bunch of them, not one or two, and the combats are complicated all of a sudden, and it really was not well paced that way. Like that's a real genuine flaw, I think.
Yeah.
But overall, it was fun, worth my time, and a rich, great experience. And then I started a new game. It was Left 4 Dead 2, and I bought it like 2 years ago, as part of a package. I think when I got Left 4 Dead 1, played Left 4 Dead 1, and then moved on with my life. And didn't I don't have a lot of time for computer games, and especially first-person shooters is not something I always am in a mood for. So I had a little time, and I remembered this time that it's a whole process to download the actual game even after you bought it. So I did that, installed it, and then went about my life for days, and then came back and started to play the actual game yesterday, 2 days ago, something. And so Left 4 Dead 2 especially is designed to be played cooperatively. So it's a first-person shooter, but you're supposed to play it over the internet with either strangers or your friends, and there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. You can go in campaign mode or whatever. And I kind of knew that, so I downloaded the game and opened it up and was hungry to play. And I'm like, okay, campaign. That's what I want. I want to play the campaign. I don't want to do any fancy stuff just yet. Let me just play the game. Click campaign mode, and it automatically, the first choice, I did not read the fine print. The first choice was online campaign mode that matches you with strangers to play a random map. And so I had not even played the game ever. I had played similar games, and so then I was like trying to figure out how to shoot and how to reload, and people were running around, and And I felt vaguely successful. Like it's intuitive,
okay,
but it was a mess. And like we failed, not surprisingly. And the one guy who I didn't even have my sound hooked up. Like I had the sound, but I didn't have my microphone hooked up because I was surprised by this entire experience. And he was like coaching us, one of the players, about like how to do the map, and he was saying like you have to do this a certain way as we were dying. And what he did not know was that he had a complete utter noob on his team, which probably impacted the team's success. So I quit.
Maybe.
Like as we died as a group, and we restarted like automatically, and I'm like no. I quit out of that. And it gives you this warning that made me feel kind of bad, where it was like, you'll be letting your friends down. Do you really want to quit?
Right.
Like they're
they're not my friends.
This is the best choice.
Yeah, exactly.
A, these are not my friends, and B, this is as much for them as it is me.
Yeah, exactly.
So then I figured out there's a solo mode listed as solo mode, not as campaign mode, and I've been playing it, and it's fun. It's super violent. It's a zombie game, so you're running around with these fast zombies and just shooting, everything all over the place, and I have to say, it kind of disturbs me a little bit, but I also really enjoy it. So
sure, yeah, I gotcha.
Walking contradiction with that is,
yep.
Where the zombie conceit. I mean, it's the whole idea is that these were people. Like these aren't aliens or robots. Like they're people who are sick, and that's the conceit of the game, is that it's a virus.
Yep.
And now you're blowing their heads off or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. There it is.
I find it fascinating with games like that. As I play them, I find myself thinking about applying it to other games like D&D and stuff like that, especially with level design and how they use those different monsters and things. And as a GM, sometimes I think about it as far as pacing, like throwing a bunch of low-level regular zombies and then sticking in these special ones to spice things up, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So it can be, enjoy it on the surface and enjoy it for what it is, a first-person shooter and all that. But if you pay attention to things like this, you'll be able to find things that you can apply to other games you play.
I think that's a great example. The level design, especially these AAA games. I don't know if this is AAA, but it's a pretty, very professional game. It's not an indie game by any means. Mm-hmm. And the level design of those games, like you were just saying, is like these are people who've really thought about this deeply in many cases.
Yes.
And there's a lot to take from it. Like, and how to, one thing I've never really done a great job at is using level design to train your players. So in a normal computer game, the first levels are very simple, very linear. And they're just trying to get you to, learn how to use your different weapons and your different spells. And so there's certain problems that are best solved that kind of makes you learn. And then later on, you have to combine the things. And then it doesn't tell you what you have to do. You just have to, it expects you to know it. And actually, that ties back to my problem with Planescape, is that it doesn't train you incrementally.
Right.
You're just dumped into all these high-level spells, and you haven't practiced. And I just feel like there's an opportunity in tabletop games to do that more, and especially in my DMing.
Yeah.
To think of ways to do that.
Agreed.
Though I have done that with you all in the lethality element. I will intentionally started the campaign. I have intentionally started the campaign, with relatively easy combats, and then I wanted you to experience tougher combats. So I was like, nope, this one's going to be tough. That's it. It's time for them to experience this, to know fear. It is time for them to know fear. So, but that's been it for my gaming. I've got another session coming up that I know you are not going to be able to come for, but I might be able to put oozes in there, like from what we talked about last time, since you won't be there to be spoiled. And I don't know. I don't think anybody listens to the show. Maybe Moira, but she's at camp and won't be there either. So, actually, Kaikoni might, but I think I think he catches us on stream or not at all. So
well, I look forward to hearing about it next time we talk about it here.
So I think without further ado, we can move along to our main topic.
Yeah, dragons.
Dragons. It's in the name. It must be important and it must be awesome.
Exactly. And they are. They are both things. They are important and awesome.
Yeah, well, and I am excited to hear about this because I I have to admit that dragons are not my favorite monster. Like, they're cool, but I think I am underutilizing them somehow. I've always been more of a, like, demons and undead kind of leaning person.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so what is it? Maybe first, what do you like about dragons?
Oh, I'll tell you. Let's go back in the Wayback Machine, Chad. Let's travel back in time. Let's travel back in time to 1981 and a film that came out called Dragon Slayer. It was the first time I think I had seen a dragon on screen. I don't think is before I knew anything about D&D or anything like that. So it's probably the first time I'd even encountered a dragon at all. And here was this horrible, evil, yet strangely you're able to make an emotional connection with it later in the movie when it when it shows that it's just protecting its family and it has young.
Oh.
That it's trying to feed and work at. I know, it becomes this whole thing. And I love the name of the dragon. The name of the dragon was Parthenon. No, was it? Wait, oh, now I'm going to get it wrong. And, of course, the name of the hero, his name was Galen. So that was a plus.
Your destiny was set.
That's right. Yes, okay. A 400-year-old dragon named Vermithrax. And I was like, oh, it sounded like a real like taxonomical kind of name too, like some old Greek name. And I fell in love. It had me. I was terrified by it. I felt bad for it when its children were killed by the hero. It was just a fantastic experience all around, and that's what sealed my love of dragons.
Was it a stop motion animated dragon, or do you know? Do you remember? Like, was it kind of like Clash of the Titans and all those movies?
I think they used both stop motion and puppets. Yeah, but I know that they also used some 1-to-1 scale stuff for like when the claw would reach down and grab the offering or grab the wizard at the end, that kind of stuff. So they made some 1-to-1 scale things as well.
I remember when that movie came out because I think it was a little after Clash of the Titans, and my family didn't go to the movies very much, and so I would usually get to go on my birthday. And Clash of the Titans had just left the theater when my birthday came around, and I thought I was going to be able to maneuver my family to take me to see Dragon Slayer, but my dad vetoed that. He was like, no, I'm not going to sit through this. And so, not in so many words, but pretty much in so many words. So I had to go see Savannah Smiles, which I don't know.
That's very different. That's a very different movie.
Very different. So, such as it was. I think you had got the luckier draw on that one.
I think so. So yeah, so that's what brought the real interest and love of this monster for me. But then, getting into D&D, of course, like fantasy literature too is rife with dragons and even folklore. Yeah. I mean, like, of course, there's Smaug the dragon from The Hobbit, which is probably the most famous dragon I would wager. But even like talking about our histories, like St. George slew dragons. It's been a part of us for a really long time. And then getting into D&D and finding this rich fantasy world created, like, I never read the Dragonlance books, but I know that they have a soft spot in a lot of people's hearts and brought a lot of people into D&D. Did you ever read any of those, Chad?
I did, and they didn't bring me in because D&D had well sunk its talons into me by the time the Dragonlance stories came out. But I was just the perfect age. I was in, I think, middle school, / junior high, and I got the books. You could get them in a little gift pack. It was the first trilogy, which was all there was at the time, and it was great. It was great. And I don't know if the writing holds up or not, but you might want to take a look at it, burn through and see. It's very, I don't know, I remember it as fun. It's probably the strongest, or at least at the time, it definitely was the strongest fiction patterned after Dungeons and Dragons, the rule set D&D. So it's not 1-to-1 exactly, but it pretty much it's pretty close. It's pretty close.
Yeah.
And
right.
that may not hold up as well as I remembered it, but at the time I just ate it up. And it's an adventuring party, and it's, I think, as I remember it, it's based on an actual adventuring party. And it might read like it, I don't remember, and the dragons are increasingly dangerous in that as well. And
nice.
The whole thing was a response to something I kind of joke about, which is that there weren't that many dragons in Dungeons and Dragons up until that time, and they were like, well, we need to fix that. We need some more dragons. So then they kind of designed this campaign setting, which had modules and novels, and became quite an empire for them, and was very successful.
Yeah.
And I'll get into it because they were, as we're talking about more specific dragons, I'll talk a little bit more about that, but awesome. Definitely brought them front and center for sure. So where should we start? So there's so many kinds of dragons. Like, how many kinds of dragons even are there? Do you know?
Oh, gee, do you want me to... I was a total nerd on this, and as we started...
Yeah?
When we decided we were going to do this, I went through D&D Beyond, so the current version of D&D, and I pulled a list and made a spreadsheet of all the different dragons that they had there. And wow. There are 62 different dragons that they have listed.
Okay.
That includes 8 named dragons, like character dragons, used in the various products.
Okay.
But it shows you how wide a breadth they took on this. Yeah. There are tons of different types.
And those are the official sources.
I decided that I would leave off from third-party sources, or else my list would just get entirely too unwieldy. Whatever you want a dragon to do in D&D, there's something for you to use. The combat rating ranges from 1/4 all the way up to 26. So nice. Whatever you want, nice. Whatever you want to do, there's a dragon for you.
Yeah.
But I think the best way we could do it is to talk about the two main sets, right? The two different headings of dragons, being chromatic dragons and metallic dragons. And for this one, we're going to be focusing on specifically on the chromatic dragons, which line up to be the evil dragons.
They are. They're the bad guys. The metallic dragons are like gold, silver, I think bronze, brass, whatever, and up to platinum, Bahamut, right? And so they're much more likely to be like non-player characters or kind of foils to a campaign than adversaries.
When we talk about the chromatic dragons, we're talking about these different color types. We're talking about black dragons, blue dragons, green dragons, red dragons, and white dragons. And we're going to touch on each of these different ones and kind of get an idea of how they're different from each other, what makes them unique, and why have 5 different types. Yeah, but I think we should also talk about the mother of these dragons, right? the queen evil. When I want to say queen evil dragon, as I was looking up her stats in D&D Beyond, and of course I'm talking about Tiamat.
Best known for her appearance as the antagonist of the antagonist on the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon.
That's right.
The only creature that Venger, the first antagonist, was afraid of.
As I look back on that cartoon, every time Tiamat would come and do something, now I look back on it thinking, that's just the DM trying to hurry the story along, right? Bringing in Tiamat to usher people forward. You got to move on, Tiamat's here.
The DM doesn't even have the stats for that creature. That creature just, it doesn't even have hit points.
Right.
Because I remember that stupid longbow. That magic longbow never did anything to it. It just shot it and shot it, and it never didn't even.
I was really kind of floored when I saw that Tiamat in D&D Beyond is listed not as a dragon but as a fiend, and so I was reading up on her history and how she has evolved, because she's been around forever.
Yeah, I think she appeared in the first Monster Manual, I believe. The first Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual. I don't know before that.
Because looking at her now, in her stat block for in D&D Beyond, it says one of her rules is called discorporation, and it says when she reduced to 0 points or fewer, her body dies and is destroyed, but her essence travels back to her domain in the 9 hells. I was like, oh, okay. So this is yeah, exactly. She'll be back. She'll remember, but she'll be back. But I found that really fascinating that this head of the evil dragons is no longer, she's not considered a deity anymore. She's considered a fiend from hell, which is really kind of cool.
I think some of the design decisions from the Wizards of the Coast folks was that they don't want deities to have hit points anymore. They want them to be above the fray and above combat. And I think part of it was they wanted Tiamat to be an actual adversary that could be faced and encountered. I remember being annoyed by that because conversely, Asmodeus, depending on how you want to say it, the devil doesn't have stats either because Asmodeus is considered like an evil deity now. And so there's not even any version of Asmodeus that you can face directly. So I wonder, what is it that makes a dragon a dragon? Like, what is it about dragons? What characteristics do dragons share?
I think the big one is, I think there are 2 in my mind that I think of when I think of a dragon. I think of a breath attack, and I think of an ability to fly.
I also think of the frightful presence as it was the more, how the fear factor. And I think, especially with the chromatics, but I think all dragons, it's not in the stat sheet necessarily, but the arrogance that they all have, especially the older, more powerful ones. And you saw that in, the Smaug example. And I think all the good literary dragons are just dripping with arrogance.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. As far as the dragons that I remember in fantasy literature and the dragons that I've run into in the game, all of them have thought that they were the apex, right? They were the top. Everything else is a lowly servant at best, and at worst, dinner.
Vermin and dinner. Yeah, so let's go through. Where should we start?
Yeah, let's start with the black dragon. Why not? Start alphabetically and move down that list. So we find in D&D that, like I said when I was talking about the list of all the dragons and how there's one for whatever circumstance you want to use it in as far as combat rating is, the challenge rating, I mean. The fact that there are different levels of dragon, so to speak. They start with something called a wormling, then they move up to a young dragon, then an adult dragon, and then they finish off with an ancient dragon. And as they go up in age, they go up in power and become really almost like godlike beings in the game.
Yeah, and that really allows all the dragons to be faced at many different times of an adventure.
Just think about it leading up to, like, say your party goes and finds a black dragon wormling, and they don't kill it or whatever. It's something you can bring back then as a young dragon, and then keep that going, depending on how you want to run it. It gives you a lot of tools as a DM to be able to work these things into whatever kind of campaign you want to use it for.
It reminds me of how they were portrayed in Game of Thrones, where we saw the hatchling dragons at first, and then they grew just big enough to kill one person, and then they kept going, and then a year or two later, they were city destroyers. so I think that's a good. I think the D&D timeline on aging a dragon is probably longer than that, but I think it still gives us a good example to model.
Yeah, the black dragons. Giving an idea about where they fit into the world, where Wizards has put them, they say that black dragons like to live in swamps. So that's their region where you'd find them. It says a black dragon's lair is a dismal cave, grotto, or ruin that is at least partially flooded, providing pools where dragons rests and where its victims can ferment. The lair is littered with the acid-pitted bones of previous victims and the fly-ridden carcasses of fresh kills, watched over by crumbling statues. Centipedes, scorpions, and snakes infest the lair, which is filled with the stench of death and decay. So right there in that flavor text, they set you up like the black dragon is pretty gross.
Yeah. So in the Dragonlance books that we talked about earlier, the first dragon they encounter, it's a novel, was a black dragon. And I don't remember if they had played up all of this, the swamp. The breath weapon was unique, as it's, what do they breathe? Like poison? Is it gas? Or is that green?
It's acid.
Acid. There it is. Yeah, I see it now. And because it was like the end of the first novel, it was kind of the main crisis of the character. So I do remember that. But I have to admit, I haven't seen many black dragons in play.
I haven't either. I don't think I've ever gone up against one. That could be, it just didn't fit in the DM's campaign because they sound pretty cool. They almost sound like the most evil of the evil dragons to me. There's something about just like where they live and how they hunt and kill people with acid. It's not like, a fire or a cold or these other kind of breaths. It's acid. They just melt you down into goo and then lick you up. It's really gross.
Yeah, that's a good point. In Hoard of the Dragon Queen, there's a swamp portion of the adventure. And I feel like there was a dragon around there. I don't think you guys messed with it. I think it was around, but maybe you avoided it, or it wasn't a central part of the game for sure. I think the lizard men were worshiping it as a god or something. That might be part of why they're not used that often, is because of the swamp too. Like there aren't that many swamp adventures. I don't know. It's not that appealing of a setting to me necessarily. Though ironically, I think Blackmoor, which was part of one of the original campaign settings, was a very swampy, kind of gross, weird environment. So.
And reading on about the black dragons, as you progress and read through the different headings for the different ages of the dragons, they give you a little bit more detail and a little bit more, like they start talking about the layer actions. And they even have the layer actions rules on the page for the black dragon wormling. And that kind of opens up possibilities for me, because I think of layer actions being for like the big bads, like the adults or the ancient dragons, but having some wormlings there with some layer actions might be interesting as well.
I think it's easy to conflate legendary actions with the layer actions, because mechanically they're very similar, but to your point, a legendary action is that's for the big bad. The ancient dragons, I think, have legendary actions. But yeah, if you're just at home and you're that kind of monster, there's no reason you couldn't use layer actions.
I'll read a couple more of the heading things because it kind of brings out more of the feel of these dragons just by the heading names. The first heading that they have here it says brutal and cruel. It says all chromatic dragons are evil, but black dragons stand apart for their sadistic nature. A black dragon lives to watch its prey beg for mercy and will often offer the illusion of respite or escape before finishing off its enemies. And then it goes on to another heading is foes and servants. Black dragons hate and fear other dragons. They spy on draconic rivals from afar, looking for opportunities to slay weaker dragons and avoid stronger ones. If a stronger dragon threatens it, a black dragon abandons its lair and seeks out new territory. So again, all this flavor, right, for this dragon is like something that's always looking to pounce on the weak, to get an opportunity, but will totally stay away from a fair fight or fight something that's stronger. I find that hugely characterful and fun.
Yeah, that is great. I like that a lot. Who's next?
Blue dragon. I have had experience with blue dragons, Chad. I look at you.
Yes.
Blue dragons, they're kind of personified by their... I think every dragon is sort of personified by their breath attack, right? It kind of sums up their personality, I think. And the blue dragon uses electricity.
Also, like, not intuitive. Like, that's how you know, I think, you're in D&D land, when it's breathing electricity. Something about these other breath weapons seem more intuitive.
Because I think we all think the default breath weapon for a dragon is fire, right? I think that's what our general fantasy tropes have told us. So the first time a dragon comes at you breathes electricity all over you, it's kind of, not to be too much of a pun, but it's kind of shocking.
I think many of us who started playing 5th edition early had a very similar experience with the blue dragon, because Horde of the Dragon Queen, I think this is the dragon you're talking about, was Horde of the Dragon Queen, first level, there's a dragon, I think an adult dragon flying around in the first encounter, or not first encounter, but the first scene of the first adventure at the first level.
Right.
And you don't necessarily have to engage it, but it's there.
It's probably not a good idea to engage it right then.
No, it's a terrible idea. Terrible idea. And so I tried to I kept that dragon around off and on throughout the campaign. And then, and it appeared, in fact, in the final session, in the final combat, and it escaped. Actually, I don't know if it escaped or it just left. It's a thin line, I guess. What else? What do you remember about that dragon? Anything else that I missed?
Oh, just the fact that it was entirely annoying. That it was, especially right from the beginning. It was set up as, because we knew it was bad. We knew it was bad news. But it was also so far out of our league at that point, right? So there's nothing we could do about it. We had to wait. We had to wait and bide our time. Talking about the different ways to use dragons, having that adult dragon right at the beginning with low-level characters is a great way to set up the idea of, you may think that you're powerful, but not really. You still have a ways to go, young adventurers. You still have a lot of miles to walk till you're ready to face that bigger threat.
That is a good example of one of my principles of adventure design, which is just reusing whenever you can, reinvesting in pre-existing characters. Because I didn't plot out that arc of this dragon. Like it showed up in the first session. I introduced it in a cameo appearance a couple times as a mount of the main bad guy, the judge, and then as it was then when you were powerful enough to face the judge, I'm like, well, I should keep that dragon. I should bring that dragon back and give you guys a chance to fight it.
Yeah,
which you declined to do, but it was
yes, we did,
and it wasn't a big plan. So who's next? What's the next kind of dragon?
The next one is. That would be green, the green dragon. And these also one that I have experience with in one of your campaigns. And I still remember the name of the dragon, Chad, even though it was years ago.
Yes.
I remember the dragon, the dragon Stema, who was sort of a patron of one of my characters. The green dragon, whose breath weapon is a poison breath. So again, a different type, stepping away from that like straight fire, something a little bit more insidious with this one.
And this always confused me because in my head, I think probably because I'd seen like Pete's Dragon, that Disney show, where dragons aren't scary, but he's a dragon. He's green and he has fire. And I think I always imagined Smaug as being green. I don't remember if that's in the text or not. That I imagine the default color of a dragon to be green and the breath to be fire. And so, as early as D&D dragons have existed, at least in my mind, green dragons have had poison that they breathe.
It really makes me wonder why they decided to mix those up, to have a specific dragon use a specific type of attack. I would love to have been on the walls when these rules were written all these years ago and up until today.
We have some stories about how some of the monsters were created, whether it was just cheap little plastic toys that Gary Gygax had picked up at the corner store. And, we know that some have roots that are in fae stories or, folktale stories and then have been kind of played with, bugbears and goblins and elves, for example, in kind of folklore, all really are kind of the same thing, and then how they were codified in order to make them different. To your point, I would love to hear how the dragons shook out, how this became the canon.
Yeah, exactly. And how they decided on the green dragon being what it's morphed into today, because the green dragons they're seen as really sort of the most manipulative of all of the dragons.
Yep. Like
the schemers and like whispering all these lies to people and playing on their deepest desires to try and get them to do what the dragon wants. So it's again, for me, totally playing against type is what I think about a dragon being. I think about a dragon being big and hulking and muscular and just brute force. And this one is like coming at you from the side. Is like maybe invites you in to come and talk to it. And maybe it's going to help you out to get this throne. And all it asks is, this favor, which will come back to haunt you and bite you in the butt at the end of the campaign or something like that. So,
and that was exactly why I picked the Green Dragon for that 4th edition campaign. Because in that setting, I had a very small territory that was divided into 3 parts. And I knew I wanted one part to be deep, like really Fey-infused, fairy-feeling forest. And so this the Deceiver Green Dragon was a really natural fit for that environment. I don't know that I ever quite paid it off all the way because the campaign shifted about midway through, and Stema quit being one of the antagonists when I shifted to more of a far realm. You fought more aberrant. I shifted to more aberrant and was more inspired by, kind of Planescape and Spelljammer and those sorts of things. So it was fun though. Stema's still there. She was still alive. She's still part of the story. She exists in this current setting.
Yeah, and kudos to you because it's still, the name is like still right in my head. Totally stuck in there.
Yeah.
So next on the list, we get to the kind of the icon of D&D itself. We get to the Red Dragon. And this is the one
red.
it's on the ampersand, right? It's on the D&D marketing material and all of that.
Yeah, the Elmore painting that I think a lot of us associate with Dungeons and Dragons. It was on the box, the basic set, the second basic set that we all love.
And this is the big red fire breather. This is the one. This one has become, in my eyes, and I think rightfully so, because I think they've pointed it out this way, this is the most arrogant, destructive, badass of the dragons. This is the big one.
Yeah.
This is the big one for me.
I completely agree. I think when I was learning that Dungeons and Dragons were, like we were saying, all breathe different things. And I discovered the Red Dragon in that context, and that's where the fire breathing is. And if you look at the CR numbers, they skew to be the tougher dragons too. It's like, okay, this is the real thing. This is the closest to the platonic form of the fire breathing dragon that I came for when I was 10 years old.
Like, this is what I was promised when I was a kid, right?
But I have to admit, I don't think I've ever seen one in play, a red dragon.
I don't think I have either. Yeah. But I just love the idea of them. Then that, like, at the beginning when we talked about the black dragon and how about it would like spy out for weaker dragons and not attack anything if it looked a little stronger, the red dragon has none of that. The red dragon is all, this is my territory. I will kill whatever dragon or other thing comes and challenges my authority. It's a really great dragon because it's easy to get a handle on, I think. It's pretty straightforward. It's not manipulative like the green dragon, right? So you don't have to, as a DM, I think it would be great as a first one to use if you want to try and use a dragon, being because A, it's a little more straightforward, and B, it probably fits into the mold of what your players think of as the kind of like ideal of a dragon.
The downside of that is that because it's the most powerful one, as written, the stats, like the wormlings, the little stupid ones are CR4, and the young red dragon is a CR10. So they could also clean the clock of most adventurers. So you might want to have a plan for that if you do as a DM, know what you're getting into and have a plan for reducing those hit points or build in and out or something.
It's a good way to bring in like a wounded version, right? Or a sick version, something like that.
Yeah. And one thing about the red dragon, I think the Tiamat main face, isn't the main Tiamat head a red head, the big one?
Yes.
Yeah, and then the other colors are more secondary.
The red dragon is the one that's dead center. Yeah.
Like the real one.
The real
boss.
Yeah, exactly.
And then so I think we go from the red dragon, which is the most powerful, to the white dragon, which, as I understand it, is the least powerful and the most likely to be encountered by low-level adventuring parties.
It is indeed the least powerful. And as I was looking through these dragons to kind of get an idea of how powerful they were in relationship to each other, finding out that the white dragon is going to be the bottom tier in every stat among the dragons. And the outlier being its intelligence score. It is dumb.
Oh.
The ancient white dragon has an intelligence score of 10.
Not even a college graduate.
It is not a great thinker, which is really fun, I think. It would be easy for a party to outwit a dragon, which would be a huge shot in the arm for a party, because the adult dragon has an intelligence score of 8. So,
oh jeez.
It's not a great thinker. Yeah.
I did not realize that. I think I had a sense, but
they are really strong, and they have good con, like a dragon, right? Because physically they are what they are, but upstairs not so much. And the lore on D&D Beyond talks about them being more primal of all the dragons. They're the ones that just act on instinct. They don't plan ahead. They don't have these far-reaching machinations like empire building or trying to build a kingdom or whatever. They don't care about that. They care about themselves. They care about eating, and that's it.
Do you remember when we faced that 4th edition, the White Dragon? I'm not even sure if you were there, because I think you were kind of in and out. I think you were working a lot that era. But do you remember that at all?
Oh, I don't.
Yeah, so that was the first. I don't know if it was on Keep of the Shadowfell or if it was shortly. I think it might have been Keep of the Shadowfell.
No.
Because it was very much the intro dragon, like the first that you would fight, so you know that you were fighting a dragon. I even think in the 5th edition version, the starter set has a white dragon. And then there was the Horde of the Dragon Queen does have a white dragon as near the end in kind of a boss-like role. In Skyreach, in the castle, there's that white dragon in there. You guys destroyed it in a round and a half. It was one of those combats that was just too much. But I think I had forgotten to use its Frightful Presence or its Breath Weapon, or I'd forgotten something too. Anything else for white dragons?
I don't think so, other than the fact that they're the dragon that lives in the snow and ice, right? All these dragons come from different places, but this is the one that lives in the Arctic. Something to think about for your campaigns as you decide to use a dragon, whereabouts you're going to put them, and how the party is going to come across them.
So any last thoughts about dragons?
I want to talk about, real quick, one tiny offshoot of the dragons, something called a drake. Now, these come under the heading of dragons, and they are something that is kind of cool, I thought, so I wanted to mention them real quick. These are weird dragon-like things. It's a creature that the drakes were originally created by a ritual created by one of the original groups of the cult of Tiamat. And what this is from a patron dragon. So this cult of dragon worshippers will have a patron dragon. And if this dragon wants to reward their worshippers with a gift, one of the things it can do is help in this ritual to provide dragon scales, combining 10 pounds of dragon scales with a bunch of fresh meat in an iron cauldron and this weird kind of mystic process. About a week later, an egg, it calls it a halfling-sized egg, emerges from the cauldron, ready to hatch within a few hours. And what pops out of this thing is a drake. And it's something that they say it looks like a dragon, except it doesn't have any wings. And it's medium size, so it's a lot smaller. And these things, when they hatch, instead of imprinting on the first thing they see, like birds, these things imprint on the first creature that feeds it. which essentially is probably going to be the thing that's going to be training it. But this is really weird, I thought. This is a weird sort of gift that these dragons can give to their followers, which is both really characterful and, again, really odd and kind of creepy. And again, the fact that it says that only the Chromatic Dragons are the ones that do this. The good aligned dragons, which we'll talk about in a future episode, don't have any truck with this sort of thing. So these horrible, like, guard wingless dragon things are another hurdle that a party could possibly have to overcome when they're trying to get through to the bigger dragon.
This is great, and I have seen drakes and seen their stat block, and I've used them in adventures, but I did not know any of that backstory. I thought they were just coincidentally, just like so many of these monsters in the monster manual are unexplained, and I thought that's what drakes were, like kind of the not dragon, because dragons are too tough. So
that's exactly what I thought.
They're often guard dog like monsters, and that makes sense. So now they're imprinted and trained, and that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, I think I've used more drakes than dragons, I have to admit, as a DM.
That makes sense. Their challenge rating is a lot smaller. In 5th edition, they range from 1.5 to 2, so they're pretty low level, easy to work in. But I think that wraps up our discussion on Chromatic Dragons, the evil side. Like I said, in a future episode, we will tackle the good guys, the metallic dragons. We'll get there.
With that, the most important thing you can do if you're watching this is to tell people about us. So tell people by leaving reviews, tell people by word of mouth, tell people on Twitter, show your sister how to follow us on iTunes. Those are all great things. And if you're watching this on Twitch, sorry for the kind of quality dip in this episode. We'll do better next time. And be sure to subscribe and click all those like buttons and all those things.
So until next time, folks, take care of yourselves.
And game great.
We failed our technomancy check today.
Sadvantage.